Mad Max Fury Road was just such a good film. It had a real sort of video game feel to it. Like it did almost feel like I was watching a video game. I didn't really know what was going on through most of it. I don't know if that was partly because I have never seen any of the previous ones at all, and so I was kind of thrown in. But I felt like that's what was meant to happen. I felt like you were meant to be thrown in rather unexpectedly. So it kind of had that sort of sense. It had a real sort of crazed and disorientated feel to it, which I think the film was meant to be achieving. And so when I say it felt like a video game, not in just like the action sequences and the violence and just the way it was shot and things like that, but it also just had that feel in the way it was presented story-wise. It was a slightly disorientating, and it just, I don't really know how to put it, but you know when you just, the best I can think of is, I don't play a lot of video games, so it's not a real thing I can sort of think of, but things that, like when I've ever watched Let's Plays and things, and you make your way through it, it kind of felt like that structure instead of a film. That's the best way I can put it across, but also just things that seemed really cool and random and explosive, and I just thought it was such a good film. It made, you genuinely came out feeling quite crazed. I felt slightly crazy the whole way through watching it, and slightly taken aback and very sort of weirded out by things I saw. I remember quite vividly there was like guitar players on the cars and like shooting fire out of the electric guitars, and it just, it was like continuous, like a continuous sort of beat that went the whole way through, and it was quite unnerving and very very strange. It was a very bizarre film, I think the best way to put it. I loved some of the way it was directed. I've heard bits and pieces about how it was done and things like that, like how they just sort of shot in the desert without having full understanding. The actors didn't have full understanding of what the director was doing. They kind of just had to trust him, and I kind of get that sense. If there's a lot of urgency going for it, like nobody's 100% sure what their next move's going to be, and I quite liked that. I loved some of the shots. I remember one really distinctively was there's this shot in the sand where he's buried in it, but the way the camera was angled, it looks like first of all you're actually being shot from quite far away, and then it starts to move, you actually realise it's a head, like someone getting up, and that kind of really, that was just really cool. I just really like that shot. I remember that really vividly, so that's something I wanted to mention, really. Yeah, there's not much, I don't know how much I want to say about this, because I feel like there's been a lot said about the whole sort of feminist angle of it, and like the women in action films and how strong they are in it, and just the use of them, how diverse they are, how each one's put in for their own sort of individual role, and they're all very three-dimensional and have characters. The fact that there isn't like how they treat the whole sort of victims of sexual abuse thing. That it's barely mentioned. It's just sort of, it's known, people know it's there, but it's not the part of their story, which I really liked as well. I know a lot, it's been talked about a lot, so I don't really want to keep hammering on about it. So I'm not 100% sure I would say it's a feminist piece. There's bits within it that are quite, I suppose you could say it's a feminist piece, because it's it's like equal rights, what feminism really is. However, I don't want to say it too much, because it didn't feel like it was sort of a burning your bra kind of film. I know that's not actually what feminism is, but you say feminist film still, and that's the kind of image that comes to mind. It just felt like a very equality film. It didn't matter who was a man, who was a woman. It was just sort of, everyone just did what they had to do kind of thing, and I really liked that. And there was things like, we're not things and stuff on the wall, and there's we're not items you can claim. That was very much thing, like trying to gain their own identity and personality, and that was very strong throughout. So I suppose you could argue that there was sort of a fight for freedom and equality, but it wasn't the main focus. It was just, it's like a massive car chase predominantly. It was so good and so nice to see a film where everybody was kind of on a level playing field, and no one was specifically the victim. Everybody had elements about them where they were quite victimised and parts when they weren't. Everyone had strengths and weaknesses. It just felt like a very human film, and it kind of makes you upset a little bit to think of as that's such an acclaimed film for basically just showing people as people. and not as genders or ideas or victims or things. It upsets me that's a novel thing, and that's something that's been really raved about in this film, how amazing it is to have women portrayed as people and not sort of victims in an action film. They're not victimised or sexualised in any way, shape or form. Not taking away from the fact that there are some very attractive people in this film, both men and women, but that's not the point, and I really liked that. I just thought it was a really enjoyable film. It was really fast paced, and the whole way through you had those sort of continuous beats that almost made you feel like you were going slightly crazy. It reminded me a bit, if anyone remembers David Tennant's era of Doctor Who, with the episode of the Master. I can't think of the episodes now, but you know when he's drumming on the desk, and the whole way through you just have this continuous drumming sound, and it kind of, you almost don't detect it sometimes, it comes almost kind of engraved. It kind of felt like that, the continuous beat the whole way through it. But it was phenomenal. Tom Hardy, I think, was fantastic, but I don't think he sort of stole the show. I think there was so many other amazing cast members in it. Like, I did originally go in to see it for Tom Hardy, because I'm in a bit of a sort of Tom Hardy binge at the moment. I've seen quite a few films that he's been in recently, because I'm kind of getting more and more into him as an actor. I just think, I've always thought he was a good actor, but I'm sort of wanting to watch more and more things he's in recently. So that was the main reason I actually went to go and see it. I don't know much about the film, but I came out feeling like, even though he was phenomenal in it, like he always is, so much more was going on. Parts of it he almost felt quite lost, because it was such a strong cast of people, and the film was just absolutely phenomenal. I loved some of the character development characters went through, and the conflicts, and it felt so good. And despite this sort of car chase craziness, you still got some character depth. It was just really well balanced, and I really enjoyed the film. It was a really good film. The only thing I would say about it is it's not my typical genre of film. It's not my favourite genre. Therefore, I'd probably only give it an 8 out of 10. But that's just like my enjoyment level. I'm not 100%, like, I'm not the biggest fan of action films and car chases and things like that. So it wasn't up there in my all-time favourite films, but it was still a phenomenal film for its genre. If that is your one of your favourite genres, definitely go and see it, because it's probably one of the best I've ever seen for that genre. It's just not my favourite genre out there, as I've stated. Therefore, I'd probably only give it an 8 out of 10. Because there's other films I'd probably rather watch. Still, very good, very quick, very snappy, just a phenomenal film. I would encourage anyone to see it for so many different reasons. And yeah, that's basically it. Good film.